Well, Portlaoise is a town founded in Tudor times. It was in the reign of Edward VI in 1547-48. So the English decided to expand the Pale by fortifying a fortress in Laois and in Offaly. And the one in Laois here we're standing right beside it was the fort of Marlborough, which originally was called Fort Protector. And they established themselves first of all in the Storehouse, which is part of the original fabric of Presentation Convent. And in 1547-48 they started building this fortress here, which became the first plantation town, because while at the start the intention was just to put a fort to guard the Pale against the Irish, it was very quickly realised that the best way forward as far as the English were concerned was to actually plant the county. Now here we are outside the Presentation Convent of Portlaoise. This was the Presentation Convent since 1824. But in fact the history goes back much further. This was known originally as the Storehouse and was the first building erected in what was later to become Portlaoise. This building here, which was connected in fact to the fort by an underground passage, was first of all obviously a military store and a fortification, and then later in the 18th century became an infirmary, one of the earliest infirmaries in Leinster, and was used as an infirmary until 1808 when a new county infirmary was built on the Dublin Road in Portlaoise. The family of doctors who founded it became famous throughout Ireland, because not only did one of them, the first of the line, found the county infirmary here, Dr. Jacob, but a descendant of his founded the City of Dublin Hospital, and one of them was Arthur Jacob, was responsible for the discovery of the membrane of the eye, which was named after Membrana Jacobi. Across the road here we have the Christian Brothers School, which was the Christian Brothers came to Portlaoise in 1847, and until 1907 it was primary school, and from then on they extended to include secondary as well. A famous past pupil, of course, is Colonel Fitzmaurice, the aviator who was the first to fly the Atlantic with the two Germans from east to west. Here we are outside the Old Vocational School. This was one of the first vocational schools in Leinster, and it was established in 1907. The particular part of the building we're looking at here now, of the old building, was built in the 1930s, designed by Scott the architect, a famous architect who also designed the county hospital on the Dublin Road. The railway came to Portlaoise in 1847, and the Great Southern and Western Railway was owned and directed and propelled by William Dargan, a Laoisman. He had an architect, Sancton Wood, who designed some magnificent railway stations, and this is one of them here. And they're all along the Great Southern and Western line, which of course later became CIE. You can see Sancton Wood's marvellous railway buildings. The arrival of the railway to Portlaoise changed somewhat the dynamic of business in the county, because before this Mountmellick had been the most thriving and industrial town in Laois, but of course the railway supplanted the canal and changed the pattern of economic life in the county. Now here we are outside the Methodist Church in Portlaoise now. It was built in 1883 and is still a place of worship to this day. Interestingly enough, the Methodists who were reforming Church of Ireland, the Church of England, originally encouraged by John Wesley, formed first of all a church here, which was the site of part of the Christian Brothers School, their sports hall actually. Then their second Wesleyan church, or Methodist church in Portlaoise, is now an architect's office, and this is the third Wesleyan church. Now here we are outside what we call locally Old St. Peter's Church. This is a church that was founded very shortly after the town the fortifications were built between 1547 and 1556. And this church, we reckon, was built around 1558. Inside, it has got interesting graves. There's a family plot for the famous Jacob family of doctors. There's another unnamed, unmarked grave for Grant the Robber, who is included among the highwaymen of Irish history, famous book detailing Irish gentlemen of the road. And it also has, if you like, it's among the first buildings that still remains in the town. We have the old tower in the storehouse in the convent, and we have the tower remaining of Old St. Peter's Church. An interesting thing is that one of the rectors here was Reverend Thomas Moss, and he was chaplain to King William at the Battle of the Boyne, and whether this was a reward for his efforts or whatever, he was made rector of Marlborough, and his son Bartholomew Moss founded the first maternity hospital in the English-speaking world, the Rotunda Hospital in Dublin. Now here we are outside Portlaoise Courthouse. The original courthouse was built, we reckon, towards the end of the 16th century. A courthouse and a jail are necessary prerequisites of certain Western organised societies. And along here we're looking at what was the jail, and further on was a militia barracks. But I want to draw your attention to a time when they were marking its importance as a centre of justice. And what we have here are the emblems of power. We have the sword, and we have a sceptre, and we have several swords and chains. But also, very interestingly, we have the fasces, which were the bundle of sticks wrapped around an axe, which was the Roman signification for justice, and was carried in front of judges in Rome. Later adopted by Mussolini, and became the emblem of the fascist party. But of course, this was very far from the minds of those who constructed it at the time. Now here we are outside Portlaoise Courthouse. The original fort was from the end, we feel, of the 16th century, but the courthouse was burned down, and in the 1780s, it was replaced by a Morrison facade. So it was the centre of judicial administration in the county, and before every court sitting there was a military parade through the town. Towards the end of the 19th century, with the beginnings of local government in Ireland on the county council formation, it became the administrative centre for Queen's County Council. Here beside the Fort of Marlborough, there's a monument to a great aviator called Colonel Fitzmaurice. Colonel Fitzmaurice went to school in Portlaoise, and as a young boy he helped work at the Aldrich's plane, which is known as the Portlaoise plane, which was one of the first planes to fly in Ireland. This whetted his appetite for aviation, and he joined the Royal Air Force and in fact very quickly became head of the Irish Air Corps after independence. What he did, which marks him out as one of the great pioneers of aviation, is that he, along with two Germans, flew a plane called the Bremen across the Atlantic to America, going against the prevailing winds. It was the first plane to successfully do this, and this happened in 1928. So Laois and Ireland are rightly proud of Colonel Fitzmaurice, and to show their appreciation they have this great monument to him here and in completion.